Like many complex healthcare interventions, MHealth projects are very context dependent. That means that for projects using MHealth tools to succeed in Latin America, you have to be very aware of context variables. This means that to understand the MHealth scene in Latin America, you have to be able to look beyond the usual misconceptions, easy generalizations, and overall biased looks that are usually made about Latin American and Caribbean countries. I'm Camilo Erazo. I'm a medical doctor. While I was doing my postgraduate education, I became increasingly interested in the way that emerging, widely available technologies were affecting health. I became a blogger, part of the group that organizes the Viralizando event series, which looks aims to promote the thinking and discussion about information and communication technologies in Chile and other countries in the region. For the best part of the last 2 years, I have been involved in exploratory research about the potential of information and communication technologies to promote health equity. Before we move into analyzing specific mHealth projects, let me provide a very broad overview of the health situation in Latin America. Diversity is a commonality among countries in the region. So you have to look beyond regional or even country averages in health or technology indicators. However, a common characteristic affecting many countries in the region is that of a dual epidemiological burden. That means that even though great advances have been made in terms of sanitary infrastructure, we're still dealing with problems associated to lack of access to uh, services such as or rights such as clean water, transportation, food. On the other hand, we're now suffering a rapid increase in risk factors associated to chronic disease um, that are more common or characteristic of higher income countries. The other common issue in Latin American countries is that of large socioeconomic inequities. And that is also an important factor that you have to take into account when considering the possibility of moving your mHealth project to a Latin American country. So, in order to have hopefully a broad overview of the health situation, we'll have to look beyond the traditional mortality figures. If you're familiar with the concept of burden of disease, you know that this concept um, not only uses early mortality to measure the impact of particular causes of illness and death, but also it takes into account the effect of the disability created by that particular type of disorder throughout the lifespan of an individual and populations. So let's look at a visualization provided by the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation. This is a broad panorama of the mortality situation in the world. This is global figures. So if you just look at mortality figures, you would have the idea that the worst health problem comes from cardio and circulatory diseases and cancer. While this is true, when you look at burden of disease figures, you get a much more comprehensive view, and you understand that Some diseases not only cause mortality at the end of life, but also affect the development of individuals and populations along their lifespan. However, different regions have very different types of problems, of health problems. So, for example, if we see the situation in sub-Saharan Africa, you'll see that the burden of disease there is still concentrated in diseases produced by malnutrition, malnourishment, infectious diseases affecting primarily children younger than 5 years of age. HIV, tuberculosis, and other infectious diseases take a large toll of middle-aged adults. However, if we see the situation in high-income countries, you'll see that the burden of disease is concentrated on chronic diseases and their impact is later in life. What's the situation like in Latin America? As I said, when you see the region as a whole, you'll see that we have a very high burden of disease and that there's a broad set of causes that produce this burden of disease. So you can still find that early in life there's a large burden coming from neonatal disorders, infectious diseases, malnourishment, while at the same time we're seeing a rapid increase in illnesses associated with risk factors for chronic diseases, including metabolic and such as diabetes. On the other hand, we still suffer a high burden of disease coming from injuries, wars, and disaster. So it's difficult to pinpoint the main sources or the main health problems for Latin America as a whole because, as you've seen, the burden of disease is very mixed. On the other hand, as I said, you have to look beyond averages and you'll find that there are important inequities among Latin American countries. This is a composite index in a recent article that you can review afterwards in this link. And what it shows is that it makes a composite average for health indicators for different Latin American countries. And you can see that Cuba has a high score, it has a good health situation, and Haiti has the worst health situation in the continent. And the truth is that Cuba and Haiti are right by each other. This is an invitation for you to think beyond simple geographical borders. And also to consider that even within these countries that appear higher in the health situation scales, these figures hide wide inequities within those countries. So take that into account. This diversity of health issues, this diversity of health needs means that there will be a lot of opportunities for different types of MHealth projects in the region. There is also a space and an opportunity for transferability. We are already seeing some European and North American companies, organizations attempting to transfer part of the knowledge that they have gained in MHealth projects in their own countries and trying to move that into Latin America. Eventually, the reverse might become true as well. So that's also a good reason to address a problem that might result in a scale beyond Latin America afterwards. Because of this diversity of health issues, health budgets are a very heavy strain. This will mean that eventually there will be political will for countries to attempt to implement innovative policies and measures to attempt to reduce this high burden of disease that we're suffering in Latin American countries. Are we ready in terms of technology to start using mobile technologies to address health issues? Think about this. Latin America, in size, in volume, is the third largest mobile market after Asia Pacific and Africa. These are 2011 figures, but already there were more than 600 million mobile connections, of which 2/3 come from two countries, Brazil and Mexico. In Latin America, we have sort of a in-between situation. Even though there has been some broadband access increase, mobile became recently the preferred way to access internet in Latin America. The growth from the past few years has been very fast, and we expect that the coming years will continue at a rapid pace as well. You have to expect that countries will be at different levels of readiness to implement mobile solutions. And here you can see that in Latin America you'll find some markets that seem to be mature to implement more sophisticated MHealth projects. But as you can see, it's difficult to classify the situation of particular countries. Diversity again. And you have to consider this when thinking where could you create more value with your project when considering moving into Latin America. So just to provide a glimpse of some MHealth projects, I chose a few coming from very low income countries such as Paraguay, low to middle income countries such as Peru, and high income country such as Chile. And these are all countries in the southern cone. So you see, most regions you will find this this sort of diversity. Project Bonis in Paraguay is a project for epidemiological surveillance of febrile respiratory diseases. Consider that over 90% of interurban roads in Paraguay are unpaved. So it makes a lot of sense to attempt to identify potentially problematic epidemic respiratory diseases using mobile technologies which are available throughout the country. This project ran through 2008 and 2009, and it left capacity installed at different levels. So you would be surprised to see the sort of innovations in MHealth and in the use of technologies such as social media in addressing epidemiological surveillance. It seems surprising that a country such as Paraguay can make use of relatively sophisticated technology, but they are doing that with the help, of course, of international technical cooperation, in this case with researchers from the Basque country in Spain. In Peru, from a few years ago, there has been a project called Guagua Red, which provides potentially vital information for expecting mothers and recent mothers in Peru. Usually, urban mothers have access to their own mobile phone, and through it they receive text messages, and they can also make free calls to get the right information according to their own health needs. You might realize that this is very similar to programs such as Text for Baby in the US. So you can see that there is a space for ideas that um, are implemented in very different contexts to share experiences and potential success. In Chile, which is in the midst of a transition to a supposedly successful and developed economy, there will be predictably an increased effort in curtailing the effect of chronic diseases. This project, Mi Doctor, has been implemented uh, by a Chilean company, and they are using a very simple technology, SMS, to provide patients with information, reminders, but it also has a smart platform to track patients and their adherence to treatment. So you see, you will find wherever you go in Latin America, you will find diverse types, a diverse type, um, a diverse set of projects uh, attempting to address different types of sources of mortality and disability. The question is, could Latin America breed a new type of pilotitis, that disease in Africa that refers to the mm, unprecedented and surprising number of MHealth pilots, which only last for a few years and don't create sustaining value, you might say, in the countries. Scale is a big issue for MHealth projects wherever you go, and especially in Latin America because of this diversity of contexts that we've talked extensively about. So it's very hard for entrepreneurs, either commercial or social entrepreneurs, to strike that balance between being locally relevant, of being able to sustainably create value for local stakeholders, and at the same time try to use that they are learning and take it to other contexts, to other countries, or to other types of health problems. It's a balancing act and it's a tough one. You might be tempted to think that the barriers for scale are country specific. In a way, you'll find that local regulations can be a hassle. But you have to think beyond the category of countries. There are emerging networks of professionals, of institutions that go beyond uh, the usual geographical barriers. So you have to think layers. Think about networks. Don't think about static categories as countries are right now. It's hard to predict what's going to happen in this space because the pace of change is very, very rapid. But you should try to monitor indicators such as the maturity and the quality of e-health, or better still, m-health policies, and to also try to have a feeling of how other m-health projects have done in that specific country where you want to go. Ultimately, your ability to scale your project in Latin America is going to depend on your ability to create networks in different regions that understand the type of value that you want to create and are able to communicate that in their local communities. I should apologize because you realize this is a homemade video, but that's sort of the point for this type of presentation. mHealth is very much about doing the best you can with the tools that are available to you at that moment. I'm looking forward to learn about your projects and your plans for them in Latin America, and I look forward to keep in touch with you. Thank you very much for having me in this wonderful course.